Well, hello, beautiful people, and welcome back to this week's episode of the ScaleHQ podcast with my guest, Jaemin Frazer. If you have been listening for a while, you may remember Jaemin from previous conversations, and he actually interviewed me and unpacked my story, which was published on this podcast. Jaemin is, I just want to call him the mindset guru. He's a coach, he's a trainer, he's a book writer, he's an author, and he's written some really important work on helping people unpack and overcome and address in a sort of permanent fashion insecurities they might have. And you might be thinking, I don't have any insecurities. I'm full of confidence. I just go after things and take risks and all the rest. I get that. And you know what? The reality is that often works for a while. But let's just say you're in a low seven, maybe you're in a sub 7-figure business, you're in low 7 figures. What happens when you get to 5 mil, 10 mil, 15 mil? And all of a sudden, something in you says, I need to make a major change in my business. And I can't really explain why. My intuition tells me I need to make a change. I think it actually could be a material change. There's no crisis going on, but I've got to make a big decision here. That's pretty scary. You've got all these families relying on you. You're not sure whether you're going to succeed. You're not sure whether, did you get to here by luck? You start doubting yourself. You're wondering what the consequences are going to be. You don't even, you're running a services business and you decide actually what you really need to now build is software. You have no idea how to build a SaaS business. You don't know anything about what the rules of the game are to succeed in a SaaS business. All of these sort of doubts start creeping in. These insecurities start creeping in. And Jaemin has written a book recently called The Self-Permission Method. I hope I've got the name of that right. But yes, Jaemin Frazer, Self-Permission. Feel free to have a look at it. He gives you the link at the end of this episode. But he gives you his fabulous checklist of 4 things if you're starting to feel that resistance and that fear and maybe thinking actually what you need to do is just forget about the fear and the insecurity and all the resistance I'm getting and just work harder, just double down, double productivity, work longer hours, get more efficient with my time. That is not the answer to everything. And even though you and I have probably achieved a lot of things through just hardcore self-discipline, the question is that actually the best strategy here, particularly in circumstances where if you are feeling a whole bunch of resistance in relation to an idea or a whole bunch of fear in relation to a risk that you think maybe you should be taking in your business, he gives you these 4 questions really to ask yourself, sort of four points of a checklist. And it takes a bit of explaining. So, kind of bear with us for the first half of the episode whilst he's sort of unpacking the idea. In the second half of the episode, I've really dug deep on that example that I've just given you and talked through this checklist of 4 things so that you can really put yourself in that story and go, is that me? Have I got that going on right now? And if so, how do I get to the other side of that? What are the questions I need to think about? So I really hope this is a different style of episode. I really hope you find it valuable and enjoy it. Welcome to the ScaleHQ podcast, your weekly injection of tips and insights into the secrets of scaling. I'm your host, Sean Steele, and I am obsessed with figuring out how to help founders just like you who are creating real value in the world to scale up so they can fulfill their potential. I do that each week by interviewing founders who successfully scaled, experts in all the areas of business that you need to master, interviews with founders who are still on the way up, and 10-minute tutorials and reflections from me based on my experiences in creating $100 million in revenue for 4 other companies over 8 years. So let's dive in and see what gems we can find together on this week's episode of the ScaleHQ podcast. G'day everybody and welcome back to the ScaleHQ podcast. My guest for the second or third time, actually this is the second time that we're doing this podcast because we had technical issues the other day and I already asked you this question and I cannot remember the answer. Is this our third time together or second time?
No, it's our second time. And this might not be as good as our second attempt, but it'll be a tribute to it. So we'll see how we go.
Either that or better. Either way, something will happen. Well, you and I had a conversation last week, Jaemin, which brought us to getting back to the table today because I was really intrigued and also internally challenged in a fantastic way by you saying something to me about that actually maybe one of the things that's really getting in founders' ways from being able to scale up and fulfill the potential of their businesses is themselves, which I'm sure most people would say that's not a surprise because, of course, the sort of old adage of your business will never outgrow you. I think most people would accept that and say, yeah, okay, that's true. But on the flip side, many founders will have have built their own set of evidence for themselves that actually the thing that got them to where they are today was smacking themselves with the whip, doing the things that they thought they should do, when they should do it, whether they feel like it or not, and have gone pretty hardcore on self-discipline as a mechanism to get stuff done. And many get to a certain stage by hustling and getting to a stage. And then, of course, what got them to here is usually not what's going to get them to there, so they're going to have to change things. But I think many founders would think that that's a core part of their success to date. But you have a different view on discipline. And so I am keen to open up a conversation about your current philosophy. I know you've written a new book. So tell us about, and I really want to contextualize this for founders and sort of unpack how this shows up, where you see this kind of showing up with people that you work with. So big old rambling context, but why don't we start with the book and why you put this together and what it is that you feel like you've discovered?
Yeah, thanks, Sean. So the book's called The Self-Permission Method, How to Succeed in Life Without Using Self-Discipline. So probably important to start by taking down self-discipline. I just think it's massively overrated. Not to say it doesn't achieve good, but to say that it's best practice for motivation and peak performance is it can't be true. I won't hear it. and it's a very strong stance to take, and people can credit all kinds of success,
it's good.
Discipline.
Yeah.
But I had a guy push back on me yesterday. We're having this conversation, and he said, "Do you know what? I came into an event unprepared when I was in my early 20s, and I thought I could wing it. And I made a big mistake, and I embarrassed myself, and I lost some clients. And from that moment, I made a decision to be extra prepared. So now I prepare for a week before every event, and then 2 days before I go through everything, and then I prepare, and then I prepare, and then I prepare. And that's worked really well for me for the last 20 years, to be honest." And I said, "Well, has it worked really well for you? I don't know. It's done something, but is it the best you're capable of? That this idea of the managed you is the best you. Is that really true? Because that's self-discipline energy. It's to manage yourself. It's to make yourself do the thing you wouldn't do otherwise. So it's built on this idea of mistrust, that if you snooze, you lose. If you take your foot off the pedal, if you don't manage yourself, the worst part of you is going to come out and take over and ruin things. And if you've ever been managed by somebody else, it's never fair. It's never kind. There's always resentment that builds, and it's always built on a misunderstanding. If you are being managed, it's like, you don't get it. You sure, I did something that looked like it wasn't great, but you don't understand why that happened, and you're not getting the best out of me by managing. So, the first idea that although self-discipline is the only tool in the shed and still culturally celebrated, we've got some big players who preach self-discipline loud and clear, but it's not best practice. There's no way in the world that it is the top shelf motivation strategy for ambitious midlifers.
Do you know what I love? First of all, I love that you are tackling like a holy grail that everybody goes, "Oh yeah, I can accept that because I hear it all the time and therefore it must be true." But actually stepping back and saying, is that the best? And so I like the fact that it's not saying self-discipline is a terrible idea, but the question is, are you fulfilling your potential if actually that's your only method? Or is it actually that you're getting to 70% in the same way? And following on from that conversation about other people, if you hire an A player and you're really excited because you've worked hard, you've gone and found this amazing person, you think this person's going to deliver amazing results in my business, and then because you're really scared, maybe you haven't had leadership experiences where actually you have been really clear about perhaps what to achieve and why and when, but actually been very loose on the how and given them all that freedom, and people therefore get to bring that creativity. And actually the opposite of that, when you're fearful, is that you try to control it and manage the tasks.
Yeah.
And I absolutely, growing up, it's like hands up, that was me. When I was nervous that something maybe wasn't happening, I was like, boom, straight down the detail, just right in there. And that was not optimal. That was a long way from optimal. And so was I still able to achieve outcomes? Definitely. Was I good at managing in that way and still having a relationship with the person? Yes. But did I get the most out of that person? No. Why? Because they're now waiting for me to manage them.
That's exactly right. And they're resenting you. And so that relationship is going to end badly. And this is what I find somewhere in the midlife season, there's a really predictable pinch point that happens. So um, self-discipline is to use your best energy against yourself to manage yourself, all based on this mistrust that you have. And I think when you're young, you can get away with it. You can run your life without a lot of self-awareness. You can, burn the candle at both ends. You can steal from Peter to pay Paul. You can just get it done. And I think the unconscious kind of goes, well, there's no point really fighting for a fair cause here because I'm not going to be listened to. But I think the midlife season comes and you no longer have energy to waste. And so now the unconscious has a chance to go, right, you want to treat me like your enemy, do you? Okay, well, I control 90% of your function. And you think you can dominate, control, trick, undermine, mistrust me, and get the best. Well, I'm not prepared to be your enemy anymore. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get in your way. I'm actually going to resist you. So I'm going to pull out fuses. I'm going to weaken your motivation. I'm going to undermine your confidence. I'm going to block your clarity. I'm going to make decision making difficult. I'm going to create sickness. Like I'm actually going to thwart your plans. And you're going to be really confused about that, no doubt, because it's going to feel like you have this enemy inside you. But this resistance is just to drive you to the conversation table so we can renegotiate the terms of this relationship. And and it's such a loving thing to do. So Stephen
Can you give me an
Pressfield,
example of that playing out? Like, give me an example that a founder would sort of recognize where they're getting that resistance. Maybe what might they be doing where they're having to sort of flagellate themselves with the self-discipline whip, and then getting this resistance.
So a client I worked with, so he's in a business partnership, and so together they're performing like they're co-founders in a business together. They're both bringing different things to the team, but he's watching himself underperform, and it's terrifying. He's seeing his partner appear to have more motivation, more energy, and he's watching himself struggle with decisions, procrastinate, like has got a bunch of tasks that are his responsibility, and he's not efficient. He understands that he's putting things off. He's confused about the right decision to make. He needs to access creativity to solve problems, and he can't find the creativity. And it's very concerning and very alarming. And so this resistance starts showing up, and then people go, right, well, what I need to do is just double down on more discipline. So I just got to get better at managing myself. So, right, ice baths, 5 a.m. I'm going to do the 75 hard challenge. Like, I'm going to, like, every time a midlifer does a 75 hard challenge, your unconscious rolls its eyes and just like,
For those who haven't heard of the 75 hard challenge, what is it?
It's just basically a whole bunch of really hard things, like all the things you don't want to do times 10 to the max, do all them and do it 75 days in a row and post it on social media so everyone knows what a hard ass you are and that you are going to forge ahead by the strength of your discipline. And so to get to that midlife pinch point and feel the resistance growing and think, right, I'm just going to override it and dominate. It's like, oh, wow.
It's interesting. You can almost hear yourself in that moment where you go, I just need to work harder. Like, actually, the issue here is like whatever's not working. I just need to outwork this problem.
And I can't afford to stop. And I can't, because if I snooze, I lose. So any moment that I stop managing, I will go backwards, and I can't afford to go backwards. So I have to keep pushing. And you can see why people have burnout and breakdowns and really have significant mental health issues because they just break themselves. Stephen Pressfield, I was going to mention his book. Have you come across the book The War of Art?
No.
Tim Ferriss, he says it's the greatest book ever written for creatives. So people trying to bring creative solutions, problem solving, artists, entrepreneurs, leaders. But Pressfield says, righto, if you're going to bring good work to the world, you're going to encounter resistance. And he personifies this resistance, calls it resistance with a capital R, and suggests it's something outside of you that is going to dominate, and you are at war with that resistance. And it's a tragedy because he's 70 years old and he's still at war with resistance. He's still terrified every time he sits down at a laptop to write. He still has to trick himself and fight himself to bring creativity. Now,
Mm.
I've written, this is book number 6. I promise you, I'm not at war with anything or anyone. I have permission to write this book. Like I can bring my best. I can show up at my best where it matters most. All of my resources are pointed in the same direction. I'm not managing anything about me. I have access to my resources and I do the thing that I want to do. And sure, it might be difficult, but I get up before my alarm. I never miss a session. I never have writer's block. I don't miss a deadline, and none of it's managed. So to say that he's performing at his peak and encouraging people to go to war with themselves, it's such a tragedy. And I think back to the idea of this, there's a window of opportunity in the midlife season where your unconscious goes, I got to get your attention. Like there's a chance you'll listen. There's a chance that we can have this conversation. Just like a courageous employee who feels like they've been managed says, I reckon if I can sit down with my boss and just explain this and get a way where he can trust and empower me, we can achieve a better outcome because this is not working. So, there's a real case of permission denied. Firstly, when you are honest about yourself, if you realize that you've been at war with yourself, and now that part of you that you've been fighting is actually going, right, well, if you want to be enemies, I will be your enemy and I will resist you. You're not making that up. That's not psychosomatic. I am in your way, and permission is denied. So what are you going to do
So
about
so give me some more examples of a founder that you see kind of hitting that block, like what they're saying to themselves when they're feeling that resistance. And obviously one choice is double down. What's the alternative? What does that conversation about permission look like? What is the alternative of going, I'm just feeling a whole bunch of resistance, I'm just going to smash my way through it and hope for the best?
So I think you asked 2 questions there, so I'll separate them because I think it's really important to differentiate. So I'm working with a founder at the moment who just sold his company. So founded something, really succeeded, sold it for a really large sum of money. So that's a great success, more than he imagined. And now having gone through that success and having given over that business, now is paralyzed. It's like, well, I just assumed I'd go into the next thing, but clearly has no permission to go into the next thing. Clearly is procrastinating about all the thing, has put on weight, has developed some injuries, has brain fog all the time, is feeling anxious, is feeling unmotivated. There's this weird stuff happening for someone who's been a high performer for 20 years, achieved an incredible amount of success, now can't find the next thing and is wondering what in the world is wrong with him. So if you can kind of go, right, this is not a discipline problem. This is a permission problem. You do not have permission from yourself to move forward in this season. Like the hardest thing for me to describe in this book is this idea of how do you get permission? Because I hear people say, okay, so self-permission, right? So you just got to be kind to yourself. You just give yourself permission to rest more and give yourself permission to not care what others think and just do what's right for you. No, that's not how permission works. When you're a kid, the adults own permission, and you got to do something to get it. So, you're in year 1 or year 2. Miss, can I go to the toilet? No, you haven't finished your maths. Do your maths, and then you can go to the toilet. You're a teenager at home. Dad, can I go to this party on the weekend? What do you mean? No, you haven't mown the lawn. Mow the lawn, and then sure, permission granted. And so, in the same way, there are actually conditions to be satisfied. Your unconscious has thwarted you for a reason. And the best metaphor I've got for that is that it's like you're running a factory and the safety officers come on site and, smash the emergency shutdown button, said, boys, like tools down, this setup's not safe. And everyone's blowing up because they want productivity and profitability. And the safety officer says, listen, this blade's about to vibrate loose. This floorboard's cracked. This lead's shorting. Someone's going to die in here. I'm not your enemy. I want productivity and profitability as much as you do, but your success must be safe. So until you satisfy these conditions on my clipboard of all the dangers, you do not have permission to power up again. As soon as you've done it, permission granted. So it's this beautifully loving conversation that when you realize it, you're actually so grateful for, that your unconscious would go, your setup's not safe. You're a crazy person. Like there's a whole bunch of really vulnerable, precarious setups in your operating system, how you think about yourself, how you treat others, your doubts, your fears, your insecurities, your unresolved wounds. Like you are this close to peril. So, and you want more energy to power up in the next season of life? No, your success must be safe. So the fun of this is there are 4 things. Every ambitious midlifer, there are 4 very predictable conditions that would have to be satisfied, and they're conditions that do not automatically fix themselves. So if you haven't
Okay.
had this conversation with yourself, I promise you these 4 things will be on your safety officer's list too, and they're requiring urgent attention because they are the most dangerous things in your life right now. And if you were to get more power, then you just speed up the rate of your demise.
Okay, I'm in. What are the 4 things? Give it to me.
Well, they're not fun, but I
Damn
don't.
it. I thought you were going to tell me they're really easy, Sean, and you just
Yeah,
tick
well,
1, 2, 3, 4, and then just keep moving. That's what we want, right?
yeah. I like the idea of simple and hard, and like I don't ever think hard's a problem. I think we do hard all the time. I think
Yeah, we're
it's
pretty
just
good at
get
hard, those
smart,
people.
like optimize, put your best energy in the right direction, and then your hard work is actually rewarding you rather than your hard work making things worse. So here are the 4, and I'll submit them to you, to your listeners. Try them on, see what you think. So I'll
Thank you.
frame them as safety breaches, so the negative version of them. So safety breach number 1, safety officer, your unconscious says, "Hey, listen, you don't trust me. You don't trust me, and if you don't trust me, then there's no safe place to retreat into. If you don't trust yourself, the world's going to eat you alive. Like." Where is safe if you have no trust within? Like you are in such danger of anxiety and fear and insecurity, and your world is chaos. So
Do you mean if I take that example, okay, you've got this founder who's built and exited, now he's stuck in this quagmire of like what next, not sure which way to turn, not how to move forward. The trusting issue is about, do you have faith that actually if I provide an intuitive response that actually it's the right response? That kind of, is that how you'd
exactly
sense check
right.
whether you
And
don't trust yourself? It's like, oh, I had an intuition to do this, but then I had to ask myself 75 questions, do a risk matrix, do a big pros and cons list, talk to my wife, talk to my friends, rather than just going, actually, my intuition served me well in the past and it's probably there. Is that
well,
what
of
you mean?
course, absolutely. And for this guy, he's like, well, did I get lucky the first time? Was it just a chance? Did I even contribute to this? Do I know what to do if left to my own devices? Like, can I actually relax in my own nature to lead me forward here? Or have I got to constantly force myself like I always have? So all self-discipline energy is managing, and you manage those you don't trust. So the evidence, if you discipline yourself, then you don't trust. To be a leader who, like, if you go back to the employment situation, if you're a trusting leader, you're not managing. You're like, I trust you. We're on the same page. You want the same thing I do. Let's work together. There's no managing there. So, my whole world has been built around insecurity, and the Insecurity Project is helping people think intelligently about unresolved insecurity. And that really is the trust piece. When I help people examine what they're afraid of, it's always that, like, people think they're afraid of failing, or they think they're afraid of being rejected. It's never that. It's always the personal implications. If I was to fail, then what does that reveal about me? If I was to be rejected, well, what does
To
that show?
myself.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're actually most afraid of our own worst opinion of ourselves. We just don't want anyone to confirm it. That's insecurity. And so if you even look more closely about that, there are always opinions formed when you're a child, and there are opinions that take the form of an accusation. So with 100% certainty, no one survives their childhood without having the first embarrassing, disappointing, upsetting moment, and then thinking the reason it happened was because of them. So they accuse themselves of some inadequacy, some problem. They label themselves in some way. You're stupid, or you're silly, or you're an idiot, or you're dumb, or you're fat, or you're weird, or you're worthless. Like, there's always something around that. And so from that point, there's this mistrust. It's like, I got to manage you, because if I let you out, you're going to ruin it like you just did before. So there's this breakdown of relationship that happens in every single case, in every human's life, in your childhood, and you come into your adult life without that having been resolved. You're just fighting against that, hoping you can pull it all together so that no one knows who you really are. And the midlife, your unconscious goes, hey, listen, you don't trust me and you got it all wrong. Like that thing you said about me when I was 5, it's a misunderstanding. And you're treating me as though it's actually true. It's unfair. We've got to go revisit. We have to go revisit those painful moments and those opinions, those accusations, those assumptions about the nature we have, because until you can resolve that there's actually no danger inside, then you'll never trust yourself. So there's some work to do, but it's predictable work and it's forensic work. Like, I have the privilege of going into people's backstory all the time, although however reluctant people are to go back, I always take them back in to review the data and the case they built against themselves and all the evidence they've gathered. It would never stack up in a court of law. Like, it's anecdotal evidence at best. It's biased. There's no hard. They couldn't run a scientific experiment and have that replicated by someone that's not them. No one else will agree with the assumption they've made about what's wrong with them. So the trust is unfair.
So, for
it's
example,
unkind,
if they were carrying around, I'm not good enough. I'm more likely to fail than to succeed, or all of my successes come from luck. What you're saying is they will have built a case around that, but actually, if you asked any other person, any kind of reasonable person test, they'd go, but like none of that stacks up together. Like that's not true.
Yes.
Okay.
And more importantly, if they ask themselves, like the best of themselves, the part of them that was relaxed and fine and misunderstood in the first place, they'd say, it's not true. It's never been true. You got it wrong. You jumped to a conclusion and you don't trust me. You haven't trusted me for 35 years and I'm tired of that. I can't handle this mistrust anymore because it's not fair. I'm not who you think I am. So it's just a very, whether it's good or bad, right or wrong, it's just a very dangerous way to be a human, let alone a founder, let alone someone who's trying to run something impressive if you don't trust yourself. So,
okay.
Trust.
So that's the first one. Trust is the first one. What's the second?
Second one is, okay, you're not going to like this either, but in certain situations with certain people, you show up needy. And it's just really dangerous because whenever you need something from out there, then you are disempowered. You set yourself up to be hurt. If I need you to like me, you can withhold that from me and then I crumble and then I have to do what you want to get what I need. So any kind of external validation, approval, acceptance, love, any attempt to meet the core emotional, psychological needs outside yourself, it's just dangerous. And of course, that's what the child does because, children don't have the emotional intelligence or the maturity to be able to self-validate and, know who they really are themselves. So, of course, they're going to look to their parents and adults and friends to love them and support them and believe in them. But if you're still living for the applause of others, the approval of others, if you're still trying to make your dad proud, even though he died 20 years ago, if you're still waiting for someone of note to celebrate your achievement and hoping that this is the thing that gets their attention, like what is your motivation? What's driving you? If you are needy, you're in danger of going without, and worse, you're in danger of compromising your values or selling out to get what you need. So it's just a really dangerous way to be.
I'm thinking about your founder example, who, somebody who's had success too, like round 2. I remember actually having this conversation with one of the founders I interviewed on my podcast who'd built a very successful in-home services type organization, very large, very successful, stepped back, installed a CEO. And then round 2 has done a sort of tech startup in the mental health space. She's like, the level of fear of being judged in round 2 when I'd been so successful in round 1 is like, this could be an absolute fail. What's everyone going to think of me? What am I going to think of myself? Maybe I'm going to think, as you said, that the first time was a fluke. Whose external validation am I going to be craving in this second process? if, for example, the numbers, obviously there's a financial reality to numbers, but it's like, do the numbers have to be staggering for me to be okay? Like, that's the kind of external validation factor. Do I have to be award winning? Otherwise,
Yeah,
actually, it's not
for
good
sure.
enough. What if this is not anything like the first one? That's
Yeah.
scary.
And they're conversations that your unconscious wants to resolve because they're just dangerous to go in with that, go, it'll take care of itself, I'm okay. No, you're not okay. You are one moment away from crumbling. If the thing you need to happen doesn't happen, well, that's going to destroy you. So, and
Mm,
often people haven't considered this, but the core needs certainty, variety, significance, love, contribution, growth, which is Anthony Robbins' great contribution. Just like you worked out how to dress yourself and eat your own, feed yourself and drive a car and earn money, like you've worked out how to get physical and financial self-sufficiency. So in the same way, you are able to get emotional, intellectual, and psychological self-sufficiency too, as you realize it is your job to bring certainty and significance and love to yourself. That's what it means to be an adult. So although it's rare, and by that definition, not many people are actually fully adult. Most people are still
mm,
very externally referenced,
mm.
and very needy. It's
Yeah.
just you'd really be so grateful when you understand that your unconscious is lovingly pleading with you to resolve this great safety breach. And
Mm,
because if you deeply love and accept yourself, if you are your own source of validation and approval, if you're certain that you're a good person no matter what happens next, you can go play in the world. Like, what's
mm,
dangerous now? Where's the danger? Doesn't really matter.
mm,
And then you're free to be creative and innovate and pivot, and like you're much more likely to show up at your best where it matters most if you are not constantly hampered by the needing that is still very childlike and very dangerous. So that's number two, neediness.
So, Jamin, you were talking about in the second item there, you were talking about neediness. And one of the things that I was thinking about in the context of where we can feel needy sometimes as founders is that need for external validation, and particularly in circumstances where we've been successful for date. Because I've been thinking about coming into this conversation, like where are the places, where are the typical, so, not every founder gets to an exit and then is
Yep.
percolating on what they're going to do next and is sort of stuck in that scenario. So I was trying to think of like, what are maybe some of the most common scenarios? Well, that I think that moment where you've had success and things have worked, but that you've now got a lot more at stake. So let's say you've built your business and you got to 5 mil or 10 mil or whatever, but you can just feel actually something shifting. But now you've got a lot more at stake, and you were fine to take heaps of risks when you were starting out because it's like everything's just random and you're trying to figure out what works, and you just hustle, and then something happens and everything's working. Now you've got 30 families or 50 families or
Yeah.
100 families that you're supporting, and your level of fear of whether you can trust the decision. So back to your first one, whether am I going to make a good decision here, or am I going to cause some complete chaos and damage for a lot of people? And so you fear that risk. Second, then the neediness. What if, given I've built some success and now people are noticing my success, they're telling me that I'm great and they're watching our business and going, oh, your brand's so great and this is great and everything's great. What if I completely screw that up? If I'm to take a risk and a complete pivot or a new, positioning or whatever it is, and it fails because actually now I've sort of built. I didn't have the external validation before because no one knew what I was doing. I was
Yep.
just making up as I go. But now I've got external validation, and now I'm a bit attached to it. So actually, my risk profile has gone up. So I think that's something I want to come back to that because I think there's a whole bunch of different kinds of risks that you can take. But I feel like that when you're a scaling up founder, that's actually that's a really tricky point where I go, do I take the risk or do I just double down and work harder? Like, do I take the risk on a major investment in a new leader? But what if actually that fails and I waste, 6 months and $200,000? Maybe I'm just better on keeping on doing that thing myself because I know how to do that. And you end up in this like big risk. No, I'll just play small. Big risk. No, I'll just work harder. Big risk. Like it's a really difficult decision, and there's lots of examples of it. So maybe let me allow you to continue on like third and fourth. I'd love to come back to that moment and play through these four just to kind of bring that model back together. So what's
Yeah,
the third
sure.
one?
And just on that, we'll come back to it. But if you can just
Mm,
realize that the whole point of this is your success must be safe. So this idea of
mm,
more courage, less fear does not understand basic human psychology and physiology. Like every cell in our body is hardwired for protection. And so your unconscious is in charge of protection. If your operating system's not safe, and it's going to go, oh well, I'll just let you go out into the cold, unprotected. No, it's like,
Mm.
let's make it safe. Make it safe, then scale up. So if scaling up is going to expose you to a bunch of dangers, if you don't trust yourself and you want to scale up, if you're needy and you want to scale up, no, it's
Mm.
just too risky. So
Mm.
we can come back there. Number
Yeah.
3 is, and again framed in the negative, the safety breach. It's like, again, you're not going to like this, but your gameplay sucks. And so,
Mhm.
what the unconscious means by that is, whether you are aware of it or not, you are involved in a whole bunch of games. And gamifying your world is an incredibly powerful thing to do. And it simplifies your decision making dramatically, and it helps you gain clarity on what gets you resources. So if you have not done an audit of all the games you're involved in, then without
Give us an
exception.
example of a game, in the way that you're thinking about a game. So, like
Well,
that founder
so
who's scaling up, they're at 5 mil. What kind of games might they be playing that are relevant?
yeah, so I mean, you might have been caught up in the game of money. Um, you know,
Mhm.
Gamification is to apply game structure to non-game domains. So you're like, no, it's not a game. I'm living. I'm putting food on the table. Yeah, but what if money was a game? What if business was a game? What if scaling up was a game? What if marriage was a game? What if parenting was a game? What if health was a game? Like, excuse me, if you can see that there is some game-like structure to every area of your life, you will notice that you will have found yourself caught up in a whole bunch of games that you haven't actively chosen. So, maybe your dad said you should be an accountant when you finished year 12, and you just went, oh, well, okay, I don't really know what else to do. And so 20 years later, you're still in the accounting game, and it's never really suited you, but it's a, it's a game that you're not good at, a game you don't enjoy. And so your unconscious is like, why do you want more energy, more resources to play a game that is not suited to you and you suck at? So either stick in the game and learn the bloody rules, or exit that game and find the right game for you. So an example of this for me, which is not scale up, but useful to go
Mhm.
out of
Mhm.
the context and then apply it back
Mhm.
in. So I
Yeah.
kind of fell into the podcasting game, and one of my friends just said, "All right, Jaemin, you got to do a podcast. I don't care whether you want to or not. I've booked your first guest, and you're not going to want to say no to this guy. So he's coming in a week. So get the tech ready. You got to do a podcast." And so a year later, 50 episodes under my belt, and I'm feeling really anxious about the need to keep this thing rolling. And I'm not clear about why I'm doing it, how I should be doing it, what success is. I'm just doing this thing. And I find myself getting caught up in other versions of the game. Like, should I be playing the Joe Rogan version? 3 or 4 hour
Mhm.
episodes and we're smoking dope while we're talking. Should I be doing the Tim Ferriss version? Like, it's the best guests. Um, should I be trying to get advertising on my podcast? Is that how you win? Is it the most number of episodes that wins? Is it the best graphics that wins? Is it,
Mm.
what is winning? And I'm like, I don't even know. And so for me, it was a beautiful conversation with myself to go, can you just think about the kind of podcasting game that's actually you? And for me, right, well, okay, the game I'd like to play is a game where I don't add to the noise. So there's a lot of noise out there. So how I'm going to do it is I'm only going to talk for 10 minutes per episode. I will not wheel spin. There'll be no introduction. There'll be no advertising. It's just, I'm going to say something. I'm going to say it as short as possible, and then I'm going to stop talking. Um, I'm not going to commit to saying something every week either, because I'm only going to say something when I've got something to say. So when my listeners hear me put out a podcast episode, they'll know, Jaemin must think he has something to say this week. He's not just filling a gap or following
Mm.
some commitment to a podcasting
Mm.
schedule. He's not trying to
Mhm.
achieve a number of podcasts. Um,
Yeah.
and then I also went, right, well, in my game, I'm going to speak a message that insecurity is a solvable problem. So I'm only going to have guests on my show who agree with me about that. So I had a friend who, he was running a podcast around book writing, and he had me on his show, and it was a great conversation. And then he said, "Oh, Jaemin, can I come on your show now?" I'm like, "Why would you come on my show?" He said, "Well, because you've just come on mine." And I said, "Yeah, but I don't agree with anything you say." He says, "Yeah, that's what you do on podcasts. You have meaningful discussion." I said, "Not on my podcast, you don't." And he said, Jaemin, be careful of it being in an echo chamber. Like, that's a dangerous thing to do. I said, no, it's not. The game that I play is to give people great clarity that insecurity is a solvable problem. Why would I confuse my audience by getting a guest on there who tells them they can't solve it? That's not this game. Then I'd lose the game. So the moment I got all that sorted, then permission, play the game with your whole heart, Jaemin, because it's now the right game the right way. So, there's a lot to be said in that. But if you can just kind of go, hang on, what game am I playing? And is it the right game for me? And you can go micro and macro. There's games within games within games. And to find the one that's actually suited to you. And this is number 3 in the sequence. So if you don't trust yourself first and you're still needy, it's unlikely you're going to listen to your own intuition about what the right game is. If I don't trust myself and I'm needy, then I'm going to be influenced by my mate who says, "Oh, be careful of being in an echo chamber," and then I'll have him on my show. So
that's so. I mean, I'm thinking of examples of that where a founder has started a product or service because someone told them it's really important and there's a huge market opportunity and everyone thinks you should do it. It makes complete sense on this, for these 7 reasons. And they're like, okay, we'll just do it. But then all this resistance gets created and it's just friggin' hard. Like, everything about it is hard. It's like, it's hard to get cut through. It's hard to enjoy. People aren't delighted. Like, nothing about it is enjoyable. And I think that's such a great question. Which games are you choosing to enter and how have you defined what success looks like? Is it on your own terms or has somebody else given you a set of kind of vanity metrics, for want of a better term, that have told you what success looks like, or have you defined your own version of actually what success looks like in that? And if it's not enjoyable, at no point is it going to be like free of resistance. And just because something's enjoyable doesn't mean that it's necessarily easy. But actually, I think you said something earlier, which I thought was really powerful, which is, yes, but it makes the hard worthwhile. Like, it makes it joyful. It makes it that sense of progress is rewarding because the hard makes sense because it's still actually joyful for you. It's a game you want to be playing.
Yeah, absolutely. One last thing on the game thing, like, you can have found the right game but be playing it the wrong way, which is very confusing. So for me, an example of that was I found the coaching game was very central to how I operate, what I'm good at. I think I'm an excellent coach, but I wasn't playing the game properly. So I just assumed because I'm an excellent coach, that's all you have to do. People then come find you. No, I mean, a service-based industry. To play the game, I've got to learn the rules of marketing, of pitching, of positioning myself, of becoming a key person of influence. There's a whole bunch of, to play this game well, there's a whole bunch of predefined rules. And once you understand that it's a game, you're like, it's a game. Tell me the rules. Rules become meaningful once you understand it's a game. If you don't know it's a game and someone says, here's the rules, you're like, don't tell me what to do. I can do it however I like. Well, no, you can't. If you don't play the game by the rules, you can't win the game. So that's number 3.
Interesting. It's quite a paradox though, isn't it? Like, on the one hand, you've got to figure out what the rules of the game are. But on the other hand, if you play it the same way as everybody else, do you have the chance to do it your way? If you're kind of, on the one hand, you've got to design the rules in a way and design success that makes sense for you. And on the other hand, there may be still gameplay rules that actually are just the way things get done, and you do have to accept that.
Well, let me just separate that. So some games are individual and some games are collective. So, for instance, the podcasting game, I control all the moving parts. I'm not really involved in anyone. I don't need anyone else to play with me. It's just my game. So then I can set the rules. But if I'm playing a predefined game in a service-based industry, there's a whole bunch of already predefined rules around how business works in a current market economy. And so if I don't want to play by those rules because I want to do it my way, I can't play the game because it's a game that's already happening around. And I'm not famous enough just to go take my bat and ball elsewhere and start my own game, because it's like, no, then no one will play with you. So you're playing a collective game or an individual game, then the rules matter.
Okay, so you might be, so on number 3, so first, perhaps you're not trusting yourself. Number 2, you're coming at this from a needy approach. Number 3, your gameplay might suck. Maybe you're playing the wrong game, or maybe you're playing the right game in the wrong way. And so the question is it the right game, and or do I understand what the rules are so that I can actually win? And what's the 4th?
And you would do this like scaling up. There's rules, there's structure, and people would resist it. I don't want to do it like that. Well, yeah, why wouldn't you want to do it like this? Like there's some predictable structure to this game you're playing. If you want to succeed,
Mm.
then learn the rules. That makes sense.
Yeah.
The final one, number 4, is again framed negatively as a safety breach. You keep showing up with an incongruent avatar. So an avatar means the embodiment of a persona or an ideal. So a really base level example of this would be you're playing the game of basketball and it's the right game for you and you know the rules, but you keep showing up wearing your netball skirt. So it's weird. No one's like, people don't pass you the ball. Like they don't take you seriously. You're not even taking yourself seriously. You don't look like you belong in the game.
Mm.
So, um, I got a friend who's training to become an auctioneer, and that's a very predefined game. It's a very collective
Mm-hmm.
game. And you can
Mm.
imagine he goes, "Oh, right, I'm going to wear tracksuit pants and talk really slowly." Okay, good luck with that, because
Mm.
that's not what auctioneers
Mm-hmm.
do. Auctioneers
Mm.
wear, elders' clothes, um, um, I can't think what the check
Yeah.
shirt and the
High
white
level
pants
suits.
and
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
RM Williams, and
Yeah.
they talk fast.
Mm-hmm.
That's how you do it,
Mm.
and then people take
Mm.
them seriously. This person knows how to be an auctioneer. So when I wrote, this is book number 6, book number 3, when I worked this out, I thought, oh, the right game is in this season, write the book. But I showed up to write the book as the business owner or the entrepreneur, and none of those guys knew how to write the book. It's an incongruent avatar. To write the book, I got to show up as a writer. I got to dress like a writer. I got to
Mm.
look like a writer. I got to enter my office like a writer. I got to drink coffee like a writer. I have to show up as the person who knows how to win the game. Um, when my friends talked me into joining them in the bunch rides, I was a runner my whole life, and they said, "Oh, come cycle with us." I'm like, "Oh, well, sure, that can't be that hard, but I'm going to come as a runner." And so, you know, didn't dress like a cyclist, had an old bike, had a visor on the front of my helmet, had ankle length socks. Um, he's like, it doesn't matter. I can show up however I like. No, you can't. It's a group game, and the group will exclude you. They will put you out in the front. You'll be pushing them in the whole time, and they won't invite you back to the coffee shop afterwards. If you want to play this, if this is the right game, and you want to be a winner in the game, you have to look like you belong. You rip that bloody visor off, get a decent bike, get some lycra, shave your legs, sock length matters, brand of glasses matter. And you might go, oh, that's all really superficial and lightweight. But this is about wholeheartedness. It's
Mm.
if it's the right game for you, well, what are you doing being silly about it? Show up like you
Yeah.
belong. Show up like you are a winner in that game, and people will treat you like you're a winner.
Mm.
And it's to also realize you're not just playing one game. So there are multiple games that will require multiple personas. When I walk into my wardrobe, every item of clothing represents a different Jaemin playing a different game. And it's very useful to know who I'm being based on what game I'm playing in this moment, in this season. So I don't get
Mm.
confused. So I don't confuse myself. So I don't confuse my family. So I don't confuse my clients. I show up as the person who looks like they belong in the game and therefore has
Yeah.
access to winning. And that's such a safe way to play the game, to be wholehearted. It's such an unsafe way to the game to undermine yourself by being less than wholehearted and not taking yourself seriously, or training others not to take you seriously.
Do it properly. Yeah.
Mm,
So now, if you think about putting these 4 back together,
mm,
so don't trust it. So if we go back to that, example that I gave, maybe let's work through those. What could be the reality? You've got a founder who's they've got to 5 to 10 mil. We've got I don't know 30 to 50 people. They're feeling the pressure of making the right decision. They
mm,
think they actually need to make. There's no crisis going on, so there's no easy way to make a pivot, because it's
yes.
like, hey, that gives you an excuse to do whatever you feel like. But
Yeah.
hey, there's no crisis. Actually, things are going well, but that if you don't make a shift, actually, this business is going to die. It's going to be disrupted. There's
Yeah.
somewhere else that that you should be going, but you're scared, very scared to make that call. Take me through those 4 points, and like what might be
Yeah,
the
sure.
dialogue or the question that you're asking yourself.
So firstly, it would be to come to terms with the fact that fighting against yourself cannot be best practice. It cannot be peak performance, no matter what you've achieved this far, that there is a better thing on offer. If you could work with yourself rather than against yourself, you're a much better place to solve those problems, to bring your gift to the
Mm.
world, to be creative, to be innovative, to take this thing into places that no one's ever taken before. It's like, if you can't come to terms with that,
Start with that
then
premise. Yeah.
Like, you're going to, well, go listen to Goggins, go get in the ice bath, go
Mm,
75 hard, okay, and just fight yourself to the death, and it won't be pretty. So
yeah.
if you can just break through the madness of that and go, okay, I'm sorry, I'm actually ready to listen. Thank you for getting my attention. And you're right, I don't trust you. I am afraid. I am. There is unresolved insecurity. I fear that there is parts of me that have been proven to be bad or wrong or weak or lazy, and I'm
Mm,
afraid that if I don't manage them, they'll ruin. So the courage and kindness to have that conversation with yourself, just like if you had a falling out with someone else and they came and said, "Could we sort this out?" That's a tough conversation to go back into the fallout. Um,
mm,
but so often they are based on misunderstandings. You jump to conclusions. You were too quick to form an assessment. You didn't get all the data. So to go back into your past with yourself and go, yeah, you're right. There is no evidence that you're weak. I, I said that at a time when I was embarrassed, and I just doubled down on it and accused you of being weak and agreed it's true, but it has never been true. So um, there's some structure around rebuilding trust, but it is a solvable problem. It doesn't take
mm,
time to rebuild
mm,
trust. It just takes some
mm.
objectivity and a
Yeah,
clear review of what the danger really is.
yeah,
And the neediness piece. So to again come to terms with the fact that it's not best practice to outsource your psychological needs to the world, no matter how well it's worked in
yeah.
the past, no matter how reliable that external validation has been. At any one moment, if you don't play the game the way others want, they could remove it. If you need others to
Mm,
like you, then every decision you have to run through that matrix. What will others think of this? That
mm.
cannot be the way to
What will
make
my team what will my team think of me if we fail doing this? What if
what
my
my
customers think you guys are a lunatic? What if, all my friends are like, what are you doing? This business is going so well. Why are you changing tack? Like, you imagine the desire not to rock that boat, because what if they're right?
exactly.
What happens? And on the flip side of that, what's the worst thing that can happen? In the same, you go back to trusting yourself. They didn't get to that stage by taking no risks. They got to that stage by actually backing themselves and usually just using their intuition and trusting themselves to figure it out. And so if you've overcome that and they've gone, okay, well, maybe I can accept now that actually, you know what, maybe it could be a fail, and I'll get no I'll get no financial validation, and people will think I'm an idiot, and that's all fine. But I can get to that point. How does the gameplay and the incongruent avatar then play out?
Yeah, so it's the willingness, firstly, to consider that things you haven't treated as a game could actually be a game, and to have
Mm,
fun with that, to bring play back into your world. So, and if you can
mm,
do it in every area of your life, like, you don't need to stop just with your business. So I've gamified my marriage. I just go, what if this thing I'm doing with my wife of 25 years is a game? What version of the game do I want to be playing? Because I look around and I don't see many fun games. I see the stay together for the kids game, or the don't get divorced game, or the, you know, we've got property together game. So we're in some kind of an
mm,
arrangement. But
mm,
that's not the game I want to play. I want to play the clean space game where when we
mm,
fell in love, there was nothing between us. And so I want to know, is it possible to keep that space clean? And when it gets polluted, re-clean it. What are the rules of that game? That's a fun game to play. I like that game.
mm,
And, what's the
mm,
game I'm playing with my kids? Is it an endless game, or is it a game that goes for a season? Am I privileged to have these two young people in my world for a season, and I get a chance to resource them? Because for all the success of growth and finance, surely the big games are, when it's all said and done, you wouldn't like to get to the end and have your family hate you. Lots of very wealthy
mm,
people on their third or fourth marriages, real trail of destruction relational wise. So if you can
mm,
be really clear about all the games, and even rank the order of games, and realize that, um, there's some things at stake, and that, to consider, it's a very loving thing for your unconscious to require an audit, to exit some games that are no longer serving you. And maybe they
mm.
were in the last season, but the season's come to an end. I played three
Yeah, and
seasons of
actually, that's
AFL, and fourth year came
mm,
around and went, I don't want to play again. Just because I played
yeah.
three seasons doesn't mean I have to play another three. That season's
Mm.
ended. New challenge. So
And I think you can engage people as a founder in that game, to treat it like a game, to actually
yeah,
have fun with it, because they're going to be
exactly.
fearful as well. Like, oh my god, what if we change direction and then that's all a fail, and then what about me and all the rest? It's like actually engaging them. I remember I took a business that had that I'd sort of inherited a business as a CEO that had some real issues, and basically this business was going to tank. I knew on day 7 this business is absolutely dead in the water. If I can get it to survive even 12 months, it would be absolutely amazing. And so the conversation with the team was, look, you can choose to get off the bus, and I will totally respect if you choose to do that. No questions asked. Like, everyone's an adult, everyone gets full information, everyone makes a decision. If you decide to stay, this is what we could do, though. Like, we could try to create something that looks like this. We can have real fun with it. And I have never built a more healthy, engaged, participative culture than
Wow.
that business.
Yeah, sure.
Because everyone decided to join that game, and we'd figured out what the rules were together. I wasn't thinking it in the context of a game, but that's, on reflection, is how we got there. So, maybe that's a way of, and on the second part of that, if you're going to choose to play a game, let's say that is, I don't know, you're a services business, and you as the founder have decided, actually, we're playing this completely the wrong way. We need to build a software business that has some light touch services attached to it, not a full hardcore services business. Okay, what are the rules of building a software business? They're entirely different. We're going to have to go and learn those rules. Otherwise, to your point about your gameplay, you might be playing the right game now, but you don't actually understand the rules. And then all of a sudden you show up in number 4 with a solid profitability, invest in everything out of cash flow, services kind of mindset to a software business, and realize now you're going to be in cash burn. You're going to need a completely different financing strategy, but you've got to rock up like a tech founder. You've got to connect it to different people. You've got to be thinking about solving the problem in a different way. Like, that is an entirely different game that has new rules and a new person that's got to show up.
Yeah, for sure. I watched one of my clients I was coaching. He was trying to grow his business, and he'd been the founder, and he'd built this. It was a repair-based business. Then he'd gone into spare parts, and he built this huge thing. But he was still showing up in his overalls every day because that's how he'd always been. And so he looked like all of his employees, all of his team, and so incongruent avatar, because this season he's a leader. He's trying to drive growth, so he's in the office, not in the workshop now. So you have to dress like you belong in the office, not in the workshop. Otherwise, you confuse everybody. You confuse yourself first and foremost, and then your team. And so if you trust yourself to go, I'm doing this for the right reasons. This is not an arrogant step. I'm not trying to promote myself unfairly. This is the right game, and I need to be the right person to win this game. It just builds so much safety into your team if everyone knows who's playing what role and they believe you belong there.
Yeah. Well, that is, I'm conscious of how much time we've got left, Joe, but I wanted to, it was hard for me to kind of get my head around this in a domain that I really understand and that our audience is in. But I think hopefully if you're listening to this today, by now you've been able to reflect on probably a position you might be in right now, or that you've been in recently and you managed to navigate through, or that might be coming up that you can actually feel is sort of on the boil, where you go, there's potentially a high risk situation coming up, or, a sort of risky decision. And the bigger my business gets, the scarier that feels. Do you trust yourself? Are you coming from a place of needing this? What game are you going to be playing? How have you decided what the rules are going to be? Do you understand what the rules are? And you're going to do that in a way that actually makes sense to you? And then how are you going to show up? And is it going to require somebody different to take that next? That might be a chapter you've never done before. That might be, you may not even be sure about who that is, but if you don't think about it before you go in, then to your point, the moment you get a little bit of traction and then you get a whole bunch of resistance, you're going to think, shit, we're just not working hard enough. Everybody, double down. I need 30% more time from everybody. We just need to work harder, people. We need to get more tasks done. And actually, that might not be the problem. Wow, it's such an interesting way of thinking about the world. Well, a big thank you from me to you, Jaemin. As I said, I'm probably one of those people that has probably achieved a bunch of things in my life from just, going down the discipline path. But there's definitely been points where I've really had to step back, and I hadn't known this framework, but I've probably had to really have some deep conversations with myself about whether I was willing to trust myself. And I've got things going on right now that are like right in the pocket for this. So this is super helpful for me personally, and I really hope it's been helpful for our audience. Anything you want to leave us with, questions, comments, anything else that you want to leave us with as a parting thought?
Look, I think it's difficult to have a conversation with yourself because it's very abstract. So I think narrowing the field of search is a really useful thing. So if you're like, I wouldn't know where to start, like, I'm resisting myself. How do I stop that? So to go, no, it's just going to be 4 things. If you can just pay attention to 4 things, you could do that. Like, just goes, "Yeah, okay, well, there's a plan to work through this. There's a checklist. And when I get three or
Mm.
four things, permission granted." And to have that experience of going handbrake off, resistance gone, power up, let's go. Like there's nothing greater to have the best of
Mm.
you all pointed in the same direction. And that's where the fun starts. That's where the performance starts. And yeah, so I just like the simplification that comes. And then when it breaks down in the future, guess what? It's just one of these four things again. Like when permission
Yeah.
is denied, the next level of growth, and it's weird again. This resistance is
Mm.
going, what's happening? Well, hang on, you're
Mm.
showing up needy again. Hang on, the game's changed and you haven't understood the rules. Hang on, you're showing
Mm.
up as the version of you for the last game, not the new version for this game. So I think
Yeah.
it's a really simple and hard idea that, my people are ambitious midlifers trying to bring their best to the world. And if you don't know it's a permission problem, then you're still fighting against yourself, and that's not good for you or the world.
Fantastic. Jaemin Frazer, so great to have you on, and such a unique conversation and privileged conversation I get to have with you. And I love the way that you think about the world. So thanks for sharing your frameworks and your knowledge with our audience today. And how do people get in touch with you if they want to learn more, want to find the book, want to reach out to you to connect and maybe explore this idea with you?
Yeah, jaeminfrazer.com/self-permission will give you all the information about the book. And there's a test you can take. You might go, do I have permission? I don't know. You can get some numbers back around where you're scoring and trust needing this game and avatar. So if you can work out how to
Cool.
spell my name, then I'm very easy to find online.
Have a crack, people. If you Google it, I'm sure you'll find it pretty fast. It is a unique name. So even if you don't get the spelling right the first time. Thanks a million, Jaemin, and look forward to
Thanks,
speaking to
Sean.
you again soon. Thanks so
Magic.
much,
Thank
mate.
you.
The team here at ScaleHQ hope you've enjoyed today's episode. Now, if you want to achieve scale, but you want to know what's going to hold you back, we can help. Head over to scalehq.com.au/growth score to get your free 9-page growth score report. That's going to help you understand where your top 3 barriers are to scale. And if you'd like, we'll even do a free debrief on the report for you with no obligations or expectations, just lots of value from some CEOs who've scaled to help you on your journey. That's scalehq.com.au/growth score and find out what's holding you back from fulfilling the potential of your business today.